Words have the power to shape relationships, but some phrases can silently erode the bond between parents and their adult children. Have you ever found yourself saying something that, in hindsight, might have caused more harm than good? The truth is, certain phrases can unknowingly create distance and strain relationships. Want to learn what those toxic phrases are and how avoiding them can completely transform your connection with your adult children? Keep reading to discover the 5 things you should never say and why they matter more than you think. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Tell us which point hit home for you and share where you're tuning in from. Number 1. I wish you were never born. The phrase, I wish you were never born, may seem like just a fleeting moment of frustration or anger, but its impact is immense. Spoken by a parent, this statement is one of the most damaging things an elder can say to their adult child. The weight of these words goes far beyond the initial outburst. It carries a message of rejection, deeply questioning the child's worth and existence. Whether said in anger or frustration, it has the potential to leave long-lasting emotional scars that can haunt the child for years to come. No matter how old the child is, hearing "I wish you were never born" from a parent can make them feel like a burden, as though their very existence is a mistake. The emotional fallout of such words can be profound, especially when it comes from the one person a child most often looks to for validation, love, and acceptance. This phrase undermines their self-worth, causing feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. The child may begin to question their purpose in the world and even wonder if they truly deserve to be loved. Children, even when grown, still seek the approval of their parents. When they hear such a hurtful phrase, it can shake their very sense of identity. Instead of feeling like a valued part of the family, they may feel alienated, unwanted, and undeserving of love. This kind of emotional damage can manifest in numerous ways, from strained relationships to struggles with self-esteem, and can even lead to deeper mental health challenges like anxiety or depression. The words we speak as parents or elders are incredibly powerful. They carry with them the weight of years of experience, but they also come with the responsibility of nurturing, supporting, and guiding our loved ones, especially our children. Words can either build them up, offering them the strength to face the world with confidence, or tear them down, leaving them emotionally fragile and uncertain of their worth. This is why it's so important to be mindful of how we communicate, especially when emotions run high. Even in moments of intense frustration or anger, it's vital to recognize the long-term effects of what we say. Children are highly sensitive to the words spoken by those they love, and the emotional damage caused by harsh or hurtful statements can be long-lasting. We may not always realize it, but the things we say to our children can shape their view of themselves and the world around them. Once spoken, words like "I wish you were never born" cannot be taken back. They linger, becoming a part of the emotional fabric of the relationship. Instead of resorting to harsh words, it's crucial to take a step back when frustration arises. Emotions can cloud judgment, but taking a moment to reflect and process feelings can prevent us from saying something we might later regret. Instead of expressing anger with harmful words, it's possible to communicate frustration in a way that still acknowledges the difficulty of the situation without diminishing the child's sense of value. A simple, "I'm upset right now, and I need some time to cool down," can convey the same frustration without causing lasting harm. The ability to admit when we've spoken in anger is also crucial to healing. If hurtful words have already been said, a heartfelt apology is essential. An apology, coupled with a genuine conversation about the emotions that led to the outburst, can open the door to healing. Vulnerability and honesty in such moments can restore trust and strengthen the bond between parent and child. Acknowledge the hurt, offer a sincere apology, and take responsibility for the words spoken, even if they were said in the heat of the moment. Taking responsibility for our words doesn't mean we won't have moments of anger or frustration. It means recognizing the power of our communication and striving to respond with empathy, understanding, and care. Rather than resorting to emotionally charged statements, we can choose to express ourselves in ways that prioritize the well-being of our loved ones. This not only helps avoid harm, but also fosters stronger, more supportive relationships. Healthy communication requires consistent effort and self-awareness. When emotions are running high, it's okay to pause and take a deep breath before responding. In difficult conversations, we can acknowledge the emotional weight of the situation while also choosing to speak in ways that honor our relationship with the other person. For instance, I'm really upset right now, but I still care about you, and I need time to process my thoughts, can express frustration without resorting to hurtful language. This approach helps maintain the integrity of the relationship and keeps communication constructive. This is particularly true when we reflect on Nathan's story, a life deeply shaped by silence and words. Nathan's life began in the quiet aftermath of a broken family. Conceived shortly after his parents separated, his existence was rooted in uncertainty. His father had walked away, leaving his mother to carry the weight of raising him alone. Nathan's mother, heartbroken by the abandonment, was determined to make sure that her son never felt unwanted. She poured all her love into him, nurturing him with every ounce of her strength, even though a piece of her was always missing, the piece that should have been filled by his father. Growing up, Nathan never knew the comforting presence of his father. His mother spoke of him in fleeting memories, but it was always as if his father was a distant figure, someone from a past that couldn't be changed. Still, Nathan longed for something more. He craved the love and guidance that only a father could offer. His mother's love was immense, but it couldn't fill the void left by the man who should have been there, but wasn't. When Nathan turned 10, the doorbell rang one fateful afternoon, and everything shifted. His father had returned. But the reunion was not the fairy tale Nathan had imagined. His father's presence was distant, even cold. The years of separation had created a chasm between them, one that could not be easily bridged. Nathan tried, desperately, to connect with him. He wanted to know why his father left and why he had never been part of his life. But his father's answers were vague, evasive, and filled with discomfort. Nathan felt invisible. His attempts to bond only highlighted the emotional distance that had grown over the years. The most painful blow came one evening when, in a moment of anger, his father said the words that would haunt Nathan forever. "I wish you were never born." The weight of those words shattered Nathan's heart. A child, especially a 10-year-old, should never have to hear that from a parent. His heart, which had once been filled with hope and longing for connection, was now crushed under the unbearable weight of rejection. It was not just the anger or frustration in his father's voice, but the underlying truth that Nathan couldn't escape, that he was unwanted. He was, in his father's eyes, a mistake. When Nathan turned 10, the doorbell rang one fateful afternoon, and everything shifted. His father had returned. But the reunion was not the fairy tale Nathan had imagined. His father's presence was distant, even cold. The years of separation had created a chasm between them, one that could not be easily bridged. Nathan tried, desperately, to connect with him. He wanted to know why his father left and why he had never been part of his life. But his father's answers were vague, evasive, and filled with discomfort. Nathan felt invisible. His attempts to bond only highlighted the emotional distance that had grown over the years. The most painful blow came one evening when, in a moment of anger, his father said the words that would haunt Nathan forever. "I wish you were never born." The weight of those words shattered Nathan's heart. A child, especially a 10-year-old, should never have to hear that from a parent. His heart, which had once been filled with hope and longing for connection, was now crushed under the unbearable weight of rejection. It was not just the anger or frustration in his father's voice, but the underlying truth that Nathan couldn't escape, that he was unwanted. He was, in his father's eyes, a mistake. From that point on, Nathan's relationship with his father became even more strained. The rejection lingered, and his father's coldness seemed to swallow all the love his mother had given him. She had waited so long for this reunion, and now her attention was divided. Nathan felt the love he had once shared with her shift toward his father. The father who had abandoned him now came back to claim what Nathan had once thought was his, their mother's love. Nathan felt like an outsider in his own home, a child who had always been the center of his mother's world, but now found himself overshadowed by the man who should have been the father he needed, but never was. It was too much for Nathan to bear. He didn't know how to deal with the crushing feelings of loneliness and betrayal, so he buried them deep inside. He kept his pain hidden from his mother, not wanting to add to her sorrow. He retreated inward, a quiet child suffering in silence. His mother never knew the weight of his heartache. She never knew the depth of the hurt he carried every single day, especially when her attention turned more and more to his father. Nathan never told anyone about the seizures he began to experience, small, almost unnoticed episodes of tremors. He didn't want to burden anyone with his pain. He didn't want to be seen as weak. Nathan's health continued to deteriorate. The seizures worsened, but Nathan kept them to himself. He didn't want to draw attention to his suffering. He went off to boarding school, hoping for a fresh start, hoping for the space to breathe. But even there, he couldn't escape the silence. He was alone with his pain, his fears, and his ever-worsening condition. One day, while alone in his dorm, Nathan's health took a final turn for the worse. His lung collapsed. He had been too weak to fight it off. But even then, he didn't seek help. He didn't tell anyone. He was used to suffering in silence, used to being invisible. The boy who had longed for love and acceptance from his father, the boy who had carried the weight of rejection for so many years, quietly faded away without anyone knowing the depth of his struggle. Nathan's death was a quiet tragedy, a boy who had never truly known the love he needed, who had carried the pain of being unwanted, of being unloved by the one man who should have loved him the most. His mother, devastated by his death, was left with the unbearable guilt of not seeing the signs, not realizing just how much her son had been hurting. She had been so focused on his father's return and the hope of mending the family that she had missed the silent cries of the child she had given everything to. Nathan's father, too, was left with his own regrets, the harsh words he had spoken, the rejection he had shown his son. It was all too late to undo. His regret came only after it was far too late to make amends. He had told Nathan, in a moment of anger, "I wish you were never born," but now, with his son gone, those words would haunt him for the rest of his life. The damage had been done, and no apology would ever heal the wounds caused by his absence and his cruel words. Nathan's story is a haunting reminder of the power of words. The phrase, "I wish you were never born," wasn't just an expression of anger. It was a rejection that shaped Nathan's life in ways no one could see. It became the lens through which he saw himself, unwanted, unworthy, unloved. The loss of Nathan is not just a story of a boy who suffered in silence. It's a reminder that we must be conscious of the words we speak, especially to those we love. Words like "I wish you were never born" can leave scars that last a lifetime. They can destroy self-esteem, stifle growth, and, in Nathan's case, steal a life too soon. For parents, for elders, it's essential to remember that our children, whether young or adult, are shaped by our words. They need our support, our love, and our encouragement, especially when life is hard. If you're angry or hurt, take a moment to breathe before speaking. Choose words that heal, not hurt. And if you've already said something that can't be taken back, offer an apology. But more importantly, show with your actions that you love them. Nathan's story is one of profound loss, but it's also a lesson in the importance of love, communication, and the care we give to the emotional well-being of those we care about. Let us choose our words wisely, for they have the power to either lift up or destroy. Number 2, why can't you be more like other person? As parents, we often want the best for our children. We want them to succeed, be admired, and have all the opportunities that life has to offer. However, sometimes in our eagerness to encourage them, we can make the mistake of comparing them to others. "Why can't you be more like other person?" is a phrase that may be used in frustration, but it can have devastating consequences on a child's emotional well-being. Rather than inspiring growth, it fosters feelings of inadequacy, resentment, and self-doubt. Margaret's childhood is a poignant example of how harmful comparisons can be. Her mother, a dedicated teacher, was admired by all who knew her. She taught advanced placement classes at the local high school and was also in charge of the yearbook, giving her access to the brightest, most motivated juniors and seniors, the best and the brightest students in the school. These students were not only intelligent but also popular, confident, and undeniably beautiful, with bright futures ahead of them. Margaret, too, was a bright student, but at that time, she didn't yet realize the potential she had. In terms of social grace and physical appearance, Margaret felt more like a lump than the butterfly her mother envisioned. While she was intelligent, she was awkward socially and didn't possess the striking beauty that her mother seemed to value so highly. Margaret's mother, who was constantly surrounded by her favorites, the perfect students who seemed to excel in every way, had very clear expectations for Margaret. She wanted her daughter to be just like them, smart, confident, and beautiful. But Margaret wasn't like those students. She had brains, but she didn't have the looks or the social charm that her mother seemed to prize so much. Every day, no matter what Margaret did or said, her mother would compare her to one of her favorites. Whether it was a student's bright smile, their winning personality, or their academic achievements, Margaret always fell short in her mother's eyes. No matter how well she did, it was never enough. If Margaret aced a test or received recognition for her work, it was always accompanied by the reminder of someone else who did it better, or did it with more grace, more beauty, and more charm. Margaret, though lucky to be born with brains, was never considered a beauty. Her mother, disappointed that Margaret didn't fit the mold she had in mind, made it clear every chance she got. "Why can't you be more like so-and-so?" was a question Margaret heard regularly. Whether it was a popular student, a stunningly beautiful peer, or one of the teacher's favorite students, Margaret always felt that she didn't measure up. Her mother's comments stung deeply, and each comparison chipped away at Margaret's self-esteem. The message was clear. Being smart wasn't enough. She was expected to be everything: intelligent, confident, and beautiful. As Margaret grew older, the weight of these comparisons began to affect her more deeply. She became obsessed with the idea of being like someone else, especially the students her mother adored. She tried to change her appearance, her behavior, and her way of thinking in an attempt to meet the standard her mother had set for her. But no matter how hard she tried, Margaret felt like she was constantly falling short. She was never as beautiful, as confident, or as well-liked as the students her mother compared her to. The harm in such comparisons is not just in the hurt they cause in the moment, it's in the lasting impact they have on a child's perception of themselves. Margaret internalized her mother's words, believing that if she wasn't both smart and beautiful, she wasn't enough. The constant comparisons to others left her feeling inadequate, as though she couldn't ever live up to the expectations set for her. Rather than celebrating Margaret for who she was, smart, capable, and uniquely talented, her mother's focus was on what she wasn't, and in that focus, Margaret lost sight of her own worth. These comparisons also eroded Margaret's confidence in her own abilities. She stopped believing in her uniqueness and started measuring herself against others, forgetting that her intelligence was a gift in itself and that she didn't need to be anyone else to be valuable. Instead of nurturing her potential, her mother's constant comparisons to others led Margaret to doubt herself. She never felt like she could fully be herself in her mother's eyes, and that sense of inadequacy lingered throughout her life. The psychological damage of comparisons like these is not something that can be undone easily. The message they send, that who you are is not enough, and that you must be like someone else to be worthy, can leave deep scars. For Margaret, the damage was long-lasting. She spent years of her life struggling with feelings of unworthiness, trying to be someone she wasn't, all in an attempt to earn her mother's love and approval. As parents, we must be careful not to set impossible standards for our children, especially by comparing them to others. Every child is unique, and their path to success will look different from anyone else's. Instead of comparing them to others, we should encourage them to embrace their own talents and qualities. They should be celebrated for who they are, not for being like someone else. Margaret's story serves as a painful reminder that when we compare our children to others, we risk damaging their self-esteem and hindering their growth. The most important thing we can do as parents is to remind our children that they are enough just as they are. Number 3, I am disappointed in you. The phrase, "I am disappointed in you," may seem like a well-intentioned way of expressing concern or frustration, but it can carry far more weight than we realize. While disappointment is a natural emotion, expressing it in this way can have a lasting and harmful effect on a child's emotional health. Rather than motivating change or improvement, it can lead to feelings of inadequacy, shame, and guilt. The words, "I am disappointed in you," can feel like a judgment of a child's entire being, not just their actions. Imagine for a moment the impact of hearing this from someone you love and respect, especially a parent. The words carry a sense of finality, as though a child's worth is being questioned because of a particular behavior or decision. The child doesn't just feel like they have let their parent down, they may begin to feel that they have let themselves down too. It undermines their confidence, their sense of self, and their ability to grow from mistakes. The emotional fallout of hearing, "I am disappointed in you," can be deep and long-lasting. Children often look to their parents for approval, for validation, and for guidance. When that approval is withheld in the form of disappointment, it can feel like a rejection of their very being. It's a message that says, "You are not good enough," or "You are a failure." This can weigh heavily on a child, creating a mental and emotional block that makes it harder for them to move forward. Take the example of a young girl named Sophie. Sophie had always been an obedient child, eager to please her parents and live up to their expectations. She excelled in school, helped out around the house, and tried her best to follow the rules. But one day, she made a mistake. She skipped a class to go to a friend's birthday party, thinking it would be a harmless break from her otherwise perfect routine. When her mother found out, she didn't yell or raise her voice. Instead, she quietly said, "I am disappointed in you." Those words stunned Sophie far more than any scolding could have. Sophie felt as though she had let her mother down in a way that could never be repaired. She wasn't just being scolded for one small mistake. She felt as if her entire character had been called into question. The weight of her mother's disappointment settled heavily on her shoulders, and despite her mother's calm demeanor, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. That one phrase, which seemed so simple, affected Sophie deeply, and she carried that sense of shame for months afterward. The danger of saying, "I am disappointed in you," lies in its implications. It focuses on a child's character rather than their actions, often leading them to internalize the message as a personal flaw. A mistake becomes a reflection of who they are, rather than something that can be corrected and learned from. Instead of feeling motivated to make better choices, Sophie's self-esteem took a hit, and her ability to learn from her mistakes was clouded by the heavy weight of guilt. Furthermore, disappointment can create a power imbalance. The child feels inferior, unable to meet the high expectations of their parents, and as a result, they may feel disconnected from the very people who are supposed to offer them support and unconditional love. The relationship may become strained, and the child may grow reluctant to share their mistakes or their struggles, fearing that they will face more disappointment. Rather than expressing disappointment, it's more effective to focus on the specific behavior and frame it as an opportunity for growth. Instead of saying, "I am disappointed in you," parents can say, "I don't agree with your decision, but I want to help you understand why it wasn't the best choice." This approach addresses the action without attacking the child's character. It opens the door for dialogue, understanding, and problem solving. Parents should also make it clear that their love is not contingent upon a child's behavior. A child needs to know that they are loved regardless of their mistakes and that they are capable of learning and growing. Encouraging resilience and self-compassion is far more effective in motivating a child to improve than making them feel ashamed of their actions. In the case of Sophie, if her mother had said something like, "I'm disappointed in your choice, but I know you can make better decisions next time," Sophie would have felt supported rather than rejected. She would have understood that her mother was disappointed by the action, not by her as a person, and that she had the ability to do better in the future. There's an unspoken weight to the words, "I am disappointed in you," when spoken by a parent, especially when you've worked hard to prove that you can handle responsibility and are no longer the child they once knew. For Nicholas, these words became an all too familiar refrain, even as he grew older, married, and had children of his own. Despite his years of independence, his father continued to treat him as if he were still that 18-year-old who left home, struggling to navigate the world with minimal support. Nicholas had always taken pride in his ability to support himself. He moved out at 18, worked his way through college with minimal help, and was now married with 6 children. His wife and he managed their household, raised their kids, paid the bills, and handled life's responsibilities with a sense of maturity and independence. Nicholas believed that his decisions and actions reflected the sound judgment of an adult who had built a family and a life. He was proud of the way he had handled things on his own. And yet, despite all that he had accomplished, his father still treated him like a child, offering unsolicited advice and criticism that often left him feeling small. His father's criticisms, while sometimes seemingly trivial, struck a deeper chord. For instance, on a family outing to an amusement park, Nicholas's father would scold him for staying out too late with the kids, despite the fact that Nicholas had planned the trip carefully, knowing full well that they would return after hours of fun. Another time, Nicholas was told that he wasn't dressing warmly enough, even though they lived in Southern California, where the weather was mild, and Nicholas always dressed appropriately for the temperature. It seemed that no matter what Nicholas did, his father would always find a way to express his disappointment, often over things that Nicholas knew didn't warrant criticism. If Nicholas was ever late to a family event, even though he was punctual more often than not, his father would always comment that he hadn't left early enough. Each comment, each piece of criticism, felt like a subtle reminder that he was still under his father's gaze, still not quite measuring up to the expectations set for him as a child. These small yet consistent judgments began to wear on Nicholas. How could he, an adult with a family of his own, still be treated like a child? It was as if all his accomplishments, his ability to provide, to support his family, to live independently, meant nothing when compared to the constant stream of criticism from his father. It was difficult to shake the feeling of being unfairly scrutinized. Nicholas would feel his stomach tighten whenever his father's voice rose with concern or judgment over the most trivial things. He knew he was an adult, that he had a family to care for, that he was responsible and independent. Yet in his father's eyes, he was still the same young man who left home years ago, always in need of guidance, always making mistakes. And the most frustrating part was that his father never seemed to see the good in his decisions. Nicholas was left feeling guilty for things he knew weren't wrong. Despite the frustration, Nicholas understood the root of his father's behavior. His father had endured unimaginable hardships during his childhood in Nazi-occupied Poland. At the age of 13, he had witnessed the devastation of war, the loss of his parents, and the horrors of starvation and forced labor. He had survived harsh winters and harsh conditions, where every moment was a struggle for survival. In his mind, being overly cautious, being vigilant, and preparing for the worst was the only way to navigate the world. This mindset, born from his trauma, was something he couldn't shake, and it led him to treat his family with an intense level of scrutiny. He didn't understand that the world had changed, and his son had grown into a capable adult who could make decisions for himself. Nicholas tried to remind himself of his father's past and to keep his frustrations in check. He understood that his father's criticisms came from a place of fear, a fear born from the suffering he had endured as a child. But despite his best efforts, it didn't make the constant comments and criticisms any easier to bear. How could Nicholas continue to prove his independence when his father never stopped treating him like a child? It became clear to Nicholas that no matter how much he had achieved, no matter how capable he was as an adult, he would never fully escape the role his father had cast him in. It was painful to be constantly reminded of his father's disappointment, even when Nicholas knew that he was making the right choices for his family. But over time, Nicholas realized that it wasn't his fault. He understood that his father's inability to see him as the adult he had become wasn't a reflection of his own inadequacies, but rather the scars left by his father's trauma. Still, the weight of those words, "I am disappointed in you," continued to linger, a reminder that no matter how hard Nicholas tried, he would always be caught in the web of his father's unrelenting expectations. In the end, it's essential to remember that our children need to feel safe in their relationships with us. They need to feel that they can make mistakes and still be loved, still be worthy. As parents, it's our job to help them understand the difference between their actions and their worth. We should guide them with empathy, encouraging them to learn and grow without feeling the heavy burden of disappointment that can stifle their self-esteem and potential. Number 4, you'll never amount to anything. Few phrases carry more weight than the statement, "You'll never amount to anything." These words strike at the heart of a person's potential, casting doubt on their future and sowing seeds of insecurity that can grow deep roots. When spoken by a parent, the impact can be even more profound. Parents are typically the first people a child looks to for love, support, and encouragement. Hearing such dismissive words from someone they trust can cause deep emotional wounds that may last long into adulthood. The damage from hearing "you'll never amount to anything" goes beyond the immediate sting of the words themselves. For a child, the person who says this often represents authority, wisdom, and validation. When a parent tells a child that they won't amount to anything, it sends a message of failure, of being inherently incapable, and that no matter how hard they try, their efforts will always be in vain. This statement undermines a child's sense of self-worth and can set the stage for a lifetime of self-doubt and fear of failure. Take, for example, the story of Sarah. Sarah grew up in a household where her father was constantly critical of her. No matter how hard she tried, he would never acknowledge her accomplishments. If she brought home a good report card, he would brush it off, telling her that she could do better. If she worked on a project and was proud of the results, he would criticize it, saying it wasn't good enough. But the worst blow came when he uttered the words that would stay with her for years. "You'll never amount to anything." Sarah was 15 years old at the time. She had always struggled with confidence and had worked hard to keep her grades up and do well in school. But no matter what she did, it felt like her father couldn't see her for who she truly was. He didn't understand the effort she put into her work, nor did he seem to care. When he told her that she would never amount to anything, it felt like a devastating verdict on her entire future. That statement stuck with Sarah. It echoed in her mind whenever she faced a challenge, whenever she had to make a decision or take a risk. She wondered if her father was right, if she truly wasn't capable of achieving anything significant. The words became a constant weight, pushing her to settle for less and avoid taking risks because she feared failure. Why even try if she was destined to fail? Why pursue something ambitious if she was only going to fall short? The most heartbreaking part of Sarah's story is that she didn't let her father's words motivate her to work harder. Instead, they stifled her. She internalized his belief that she wasn't good enough, and for a long time, she stopped trying to reach for more. The damage was done. She found it difficult to believe in her own abilities and struggled to embrace her potential because of the constant nagging fear that, no matter what she did, it wouldn't be enough. It wasn't until Sarah reached adulthood that she started to challenge the lie her father had told her. She began to build her own career, find her own successes, and surround herself with supportive people who believed in her. But even then, those words continued to haunt her. Every achievement was shadowed by the voice of doubt that had been planted in her head by her father all those years ago. The damage caused by such a statement isn't just limited to one moment, it affects the way a child views their own potential for the rest of their life. Sarah, like many others who have heard, "You'll never amount to anything," faced the challenge of rebuilding her sense of self-worth. But this process is long, painful, and can take years of self-reflection and healing to undo the damage done by a parent's dismissal. What's more, statements like "you'll never amount to anything" don't just damage the relationship between parent and child, they can limit the child's ability to pursue their dreams. When someone you trust tells you that you aren't good enough, it can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Children who are told they won't succeed may stop pursuing their ambitions, even if they have the potential to excel. They may avoid pursuing education, career goals, or personal aspirations because they've been conditioned to believe that failure is inevitable. Instead of tearing down their children with such hurtful words, parents should focus on providing guidance, support, and constructive criticism. Every child is unique, and even when they struggle, their potential is not defined by their failures. Children need encouragement and the freedom to fail without fear of being condemned. Instead of saying, "You'll never amount to anything," a better approach would be, "I believe in you, and I know you can do better next time." This shows a child that failure is not final, and it doesn't define their worth. Children who hear words of encouragement are more likely to grow into resilient, confident adults who embrace their abilities and are willing to take risks. Those who are met with constant criticism or harsh judgments are more likely to grow up doubting themselves and their potential. It's crucial to recognize that the words we speak have the power to shape the future of our children. Instead of focusing on their limitations, we should focus on their strengths and provide them with the tools to overcome challenges. For Sarah, healing took time. She had to learn that her father's words did not define her, that she was capable, strong, and worthy of success. She had to silence the voice of doubt that had been instilled in her for so long and replace it with her own voice of self-belief. Her journey wasn't easy, but it was necessary for her to truly understand her worth and to step into the future that she had been holding back from for so long. As parents, we have the power to build up or tear down. Let's choose words that empower our children, words that encourage them to reach their full potential, even when they stumble. Let's remind them that they are capable of achieving greatness, regardless of the challenges they face. Because the truth is, no child should ever be made to feel like they'll never amount to anything. Instead, they should be told, you are capable of becoming anything you set your mind to. Those words will shape their future in the most positive and empowering way. Number 5. I've sacrificed everything for you. Every parent understands the depth of love and commitment that comes with raising children. The sleepless nights, the financial sacrifices, the emotional toll. Parents give so much of themselves to their children in the hopes of providing them with a better life, more opportunities, and the love they themselves may have longed for. However, when those sacrifices are framed as burdens, it creates an unhealthy dynamic between parent and child. The phrase, I've sacrificed everything for you, might be said with the intention of expressing love, but it often carries an unintended emotional weight that can leave children feeling guilty and indebted. At its core, the phrase, I've sacrificed everything for you, implies a sense of obligation, an expectation that children owe something back for all the sacrifices made on their behalf. This creates an unhealthy pressure for the child, making them feel like they need to repay their parents for their love, care, and support. It subtly shifts the focus from unconditional love to a transactional relationship, where love is no longer given freely but is tied to a debt that must eventually be repaid. The emotional impact of hearing, I've sacrificed everything for you, is not just guilt, it's the burden of thinking that they can never measure up or repay what was given to them. This can lead to children feeling inadequate, even unworthy, as though no matter what they do, it will never be enough to balance the scales. Instead of feeling supported and loved, they may feel like they're always falling short, like there's an expectation hanging over them that they can never fully meet. Take the story of Emma, who grew up in a household where her parents constantly reminded her of their sacrifices. They had given up their own dreams, careers, and personal aspirations to raise her and her siblings. Emma often heard the phrase, I've sacrificed everything for you, whenever she faced difficulties or when her parents felt she wasn't living up to their hopes for her future. Although they said it with good intentions, wanting to remind Emma of the effort they'd put into raising her, it made her feel like she owed them. Their love came with strings attached, and this left her feeling immense guilt, as though she could never truly be free of the burden of their sacrifices. Emma became overwhelmed by this sense of indebtedness. She excelled academically, worked tirelessly to make her parents proud, and tried to fit into the mold they had created for her. But no matter what she achieved, she always felt as though she was falling short of their expectations. She constantly worried that her success wasn't enough, that it didn't truly reflect the gratitude she felt for her parents' sacrifices. The weight of their words became a constant, quiet pressure, driving her to strive for perfection, but leaving her emotionally drained. It's important to recognize that love, in its purest form, does not come with a price tag. When we say things like, I sacrificed everything for you, we risk creating an imbalance in the parent-child relationship. Children should never feel as though they owe us for the love and support we provide. Our sacrifices were made freely, with love, and not out of obligation. When we frame our sacrifices in this way, it implies that love is conditional, that our children need to repay us in some way. Instead of focusing on sacrifices and the weight of what we've given up, we should focus on the positive impact our children have had on our lives. Parenthood is a journey of joy, learning, and personal growth. Reflecting on the fulfillment that children bring into our lives can help shift the focus from burden to gratitude. Instead of saying, I sacrificed everything for you, consider saying something like, it's been an honor to support you, and I'm proud of who you've become. This shifts the tone from one of obligation to one of celebration and gratitude. By framing our sacrifices in terms of honor, fulfillment, and pride, we create a healthier dynamic in our relationships with our children. It shows them that their worth is not tied to what they can give back to us, but rather to the love, joy, and pride we feel in watching them grow and succeed. This perspective fosters a sense of self-worth in our children, free from guilt or the pressure of needing to repay us for the love we've given them. In the end, our love should be unconditional, and our sacrifices should never come with expectations. When we focus on the joy our children bring into our lives, we create an environment where they can thrive, knowing that they are loved not because of what they can give back, but because of who they are. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know which point resonated with you the most. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on our interesting contents coming soon.